she continues to give evidence with regards to the cell phone records of the accused. On Tuesday, the 18th of June, Pinky basically and Sibanda were touching on the issue of the distance between the towers, and what Pinky has indicated is that the distance between Holt Street and Vosloorus, or the distance between the two towers that were picked up by accused number 3's phone, there's about 24 minutes in between those two towers. And the argument that the defense raised during the evidence in chief of Pinky is that it's 24 minutes depending on the mode of transport. And Judge Rata then put in a comment that time is static. Now, I was a bit confused by the judge's comments saying that time is static, because it can take one person 24 minutes to travel between two towers, depending on, firstly, one, the mode of transport that they're using, the speed in which they're traveling at, amongst other factors. So the fact that he says that time is static, for me, was a bit concerning, because how is it that if I am on a bicycle to Vosloorus, as opposed to a person in a car or a person in a motorcycle, we cannot reach the two towers at the same time? As Sibanda continues to lead his evidence with regards to accused number 2's phone, Ndanzi, he picks up that Ndanzi's number was in communication with Buthelezi, who is Ndanzi's friend, who has come before the court to testify, and said that he did get a call from Ndanzi saying that he was arrested, and he required him to send him basically money for cosmetics. However, the evidence now before the court is showing that there were numerous communications between Ndanzi's cell phone and Buthelezi's cell phone, which they calculated to about 6 SMSs during a certain period. Now, the one interesting thing about the proceedings on Tuesday is they touched on the number which ends in 1239 that they alleged was accused number 5's number. However, the defense did basically rebut that in saying that the number belonged to Alungisani Ndwande, which was a relative to one of the accused. And on Tuesday, when Sibanda led the evidence with regards to the cell phone number, Pinky was basically going into the RICA details of the cell phone number, where she says that the cell phone ending in 1239 was RICA'd on the 18th of March in 2011 to Thandazile Ndwandwe. Now, this is now basically corroborating the version of the accused to say this number belongs to Lungisani Ndwandwe, and it's not surprising that it's registered under another number, because the states themselves have led evidence saying that Chico Twala or Sillo Twala had registered a number which is said to belong to Longwe Twala. So now it's coming into the light, this number of this Lungsani Twala, who the states had originally said the number is attributed to accused number 5, and now we're seeing that there is a Ndwandwe person that is involved, and the defense had said that the number belongs to Lungisani Ndwandwe. We did have an early adjournment on Tuesday due to the fact that the defense was going to consult with their ballistic expert. If you remember, Mangena, who was the witness for the state, a ballistic expert, had come to testify sometime last year, and his evidence was put on hold due to the fact that the defense wanted to consult with their own ballistic expert to rebut whatever Mangena would be bringing before the court. So they needed time to consult with their ballistic experts, so court adjourned just before 1 on Tuesday. On Wednesday, the 19th of June, when court resumed, there was a little bit of a concern with regards to the numbers being called out in court. Ramusipili, the defense for accused number 2, basically stating that one of the numbers that have been called out in court has been contacted by members of the public, which is very idiotic or stupid of the members, and they've been throwing insults to the person in which the number belongs to. So Ramusipili Ramasipili did then ask for the court just to not maybe call out all the numbers, maybe just refer to the last four numbers of the cell phone numbers, just to protect the people for which these numbers belong. Then Pinky continued with her evidence on Wednesday, and basically there were just a number of transactions between accused number 2's phone and the phone number ending in 6705. We had another early adjournment on Wednesday due to the fact that they required Pinky to basically do calculations of the distances between the towers, and that information wasn't readily available. And in all honesty, we have been doing a lot of stop and go during this trial, and this just happens to be one of them. Now, just to touch on the issue of the towers. Now, if I take you back, because I'm one person, whatever evidence that is led today, I refer back to the evidence of the past. If you remember the evidence of Stain, the cell phone expert, he had mentioned something about adding 2 hours to the times in which he was giving us the evidence of. Now, since Pinky from Vodacom has come to the court, I have not heard her even once mentioning that the times reflecting on her data, we need to add any 2 hours or anything like that. And this is now just my opinion. You know, I like to throw in my opinion here and there. If you look at the records of accused number 3 on the 26th of October was in Phosphorus until about 4:30 in the afternoon. So now, taking that into consideration, what I think Stain did with the evidence is alter it a bit so that it suits the narrative of the state. So basically, accused number 3 was in Phosphorus, but it was earlier on in the afternoon, and by Stain saying that we need to add 2 hours to the times that are reflected on the data, then puts him at Phosphorus nearer to the time in which Senzo Meyiwa was killed. That is just my opinion. On Thursday, the 20th of June, we had a very late start in court, and we were hoping to proceed with the maps in which Pinky was going to show us with regards to the towers. However, Mnisi, advocate for defense for accused number 3, had an objection saying that there are certain areas that are not reflected on the maps, and he gave an example to the Basotho hostel, which, if you recall, has been mentioned before in the evidence, and in the maps in which Pinky had brought to the court on Thursday, that area was not showing, and we had yet another postponement on Thursday so that Pinky can have that information for the defense. So to the proceedings of today, which is Friday the 21st of June, everyone in the defense was happy with the information that Pinky had given them with regards to the maps and the towers and the distances calculated. And the only problem that Ramasipili, defense for accused number 2, had was the fact that accused number 2's cell phone records dated from February the 2nd right through to March the 14th of 2020 were somehow missing. Now, if you recall from the evidence of Mohane, accused number 2 was found in possession of his cell phone allegedly on the 8th of February. So we are missing all the information and transactions for the cell phone, which were alleged to have been made by accused number 2 during that period. So that was requested, and the state indicated that that information will be provided to Ramasipili. We then continue with the evidence of the cell phone of accused number 2, which I find very, very interesting, because according to Pinky's data, the number ending 6890, which is linked to accused number 2, is said to have received a call. Now, this is very important because the call that they received was on the 27th of October, and if you remember, the 27th of October was the first day of the appearance of all the 5 accused in court. The call is said to have been at 8:12:54 in the morning, and it lasted about 33 seconds. Now, the question that I have with regards to this is, how is it that the person who is arrested, who's been taken to court, is able to answer a phone call for about 33 seconds to with this number, and has a call for 33 seconds on the day in which he appears in court. Very interesting. It will be surprising to see who was actually in possession of accused number 2's phone during this time. I'm going to get into the details with regards to the towers, specifically for accused number 3's phone on the 26th of October, which was the day of the incident, and also just based on the tower information, how far accused number 3 actually was from the scene of crime on the day. I'm going to start off with a transaction where he was at Phosphorus Square. This was around 10:41 in the morning on the 26th of October, which is about 3.2 kilometers from the crime scene. And at around 11:27, he's about 3 kilometers away from the crime scene. But also these times are way before the murder took place. And around 12:26, he is in Tabonzako, and that's 6 kilometers away from the crime scene. At 12:41, he's at Sally section, which is 4.4 kilometers away from the scene. And then at 17:04, which is 5 minutes past 4, he's at Heidelberg, or his phone is pinging in Heidelberg, which is 15.7 kilometers away from the crime scene. And at 17:34, he's 16.5 kilometers away from the crime scene. At 17:40, he's 39.9 kilometers from the crime scene. And at 18:31, he's 17.5 kilometers away from the crime scene at Volhanta. And then at 18:57, his phone is at Belgravia, which is 17.3 kilometers from the crime scene. And then at 19:34, he is 18.6 kilometers away from the crime scene, which is at Moy Street. And then lastly, the last transaction, which is a call that he received at 20:27, he was 18.88 kilometers away from the crime scene. So in my opinion, this already takes accused number 3 away from the crime scene during the time in which Senzo Meyiwa was shot, which is very interesting because the state is still saying that accused number 3 allegedly was the shooter on the night. As they continue to lead evidence, Sibanda then basically says, just based on the information of Kelly's phone, Longwe's phone, and the deceased phone, can you confirm that these 3 phones were in the same vicinity within a certain time period? And Pinky agrees to this. As we continue to lead the evidence with Pinky, we then it is brought to our attention that today is basically the last day of court sittings, and there is going to be a recess. The judge had suggested that we the case continues during the recess. However, Mshololo, who is the defense for accused number 5, had an objection to this as she has prior commitments during the recess. We then postponed the case to the 22nd of July, where we will continue still with Pinky Fillingham from Vodacom. With that being said, those were the proceedings for the week. I hope that you guys enjoyed the week, and I hope that you will enjoy the recess. I know I won't because I will miss this case very much. It's going to be a very long 4 weeks. However, I will be hosting lives every Saturday at 11, so do stay tuned for those here on YouTube. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for watching, and I will see you after the